morning, everyone, and welcome to the Women Doing Business podcast. I'm super honored to have a guest with us today, a very special lady who's become a friend of mine in the last year or so when we met each other out networking. And I would love to introduce Cindy Kennedy. She is the founder of the Centre for Sass and Soul, and her mission is to empower women to speak up and stand out. So welcome, Cindy. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, Kate, I love it. I'm so happy to be here with you and all your listeners. Great conversations to be had.
Yes, absolutely. So you and I resonated quickly from the get-go. I think we've both had a lot of involvement with helping women to stand up, speak out, do what's calling them, trying to shake gender stereotypes and barriers and glass ceilings, all that kind of stuff. So I'd love to know, and firstly, before we jump into the, sort of that particular work, you are from Canada. So can you tell us a little bit about, your background, where you grew up and what brought you to Australia?
Oh, definitely. So there's a long version, the short version, but I'll keep it interesting regardless. So I'm from Western Canada. It's affectionately known as Cowtown, but it's Calgary, Alberta. It kind of nestled into the Rocky Mountains. Mm-hmm. And in my early 20s, I came over to Australia for the first time. And unlike many of my kind of friends and counterparts, they had this desire to come to Australia, but I didn't. I was called to Africa and South America, like places that were so different. Mm-hmm. However, one of my big dreams when I was a kid was to take an Outward Bound class. Now, for those that don't know, Outward Bound is like an international school. It's an outdoor school that really helps kids and adults and humans really kind of explore their own inner self and their potential and their capabilities by using the outdoors as a classroom. So long story short, I fell in love with a boy from Sydney. He came through the youth hostel I was working at in summer between university, and he was from Sydney, Australia. And between meeting him and finding out that Outward Bound in Australia was open to me coming and working for them, I got whisked away to Australia for the first time. And that was my first real foray into Australia. But then I did go back, and I came back again years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did Outward Bound in high school. I think it was in year 12 camp, and amazing experience. Very challenging.
Oh, I'm glad that you liked it. I have so many people here because a lot of Australians did do it through their schools. I did a lot of school programs on top of the adult programming. And not all kids really liked it. So I'm glad you had a great experience.
Yeah, it was definitely what you said about making you go inwards, because you have to develop a certain resilience, don't you? I mean, it's tough. It's not an easy thing. And I know there was some of my school friends found it really challenging and definitely did not enjoy it. But I, like you though, I'm a personal growth junkie, and so I love anything that makes you grow. And even if it's through pain and suffering.
We'll find meaning in it somehow, right, Kate?
Yeah, well, I mean, life without difficulty is just not lived, is it? Because it gives you that strength and resilience. You know what you're capable of, and yeah.
Absolutely. But I think as adults, and especially as women with lives that we've already lived, regardless of the next level dream that we're going after in our lives and our businesses, we have more proof that the pain parts bring meaning and fortification and joy on the other side. But when you're young, you don't have as much proof. So I think sometimes you just kind of want to not go there.
That's true. Yeah, we've had enough, like you say, experiences now to know that as hard as something is or as challenging as it feels, you kind of intuitively know there's going to be something really good on the other side of this, isn't it? Yeah, but you don't know that as a kid.
Yeah.
Interesting. So no, you go.
I was going to say one thing that I just hadn't thought of for a while, but this will probably lead into the work that I do as well. And is one thing that I really loved, because I was still in my early 20s. When I was working with these groups, we would have, often sometimes only 10 days to really try to going to use that word fortify again, but fortify each of our students that came on course, their sense of self. And I remember I would really scan. I only had 1 or 2 days to scan and try to really figure out who is a natural leader but does not know how to be supportive and support somebody else in attempting to have a stronger voice, and who does not want to have a voice and is super happy to hang back, but they actually need to be supported, sometimes cajoled, and sometimes just told that they're leading and they're going to find our way to our next food drop. And I always love that part. Like, I love the part to try to ascertain how to do this in a way where everyone would come away with an expanded view of who they are and what they can bring.
So pushing the ones that are naturally not inclined to step forward and lead, giving them a little nudge to do so is what you would do.
Yes, but also the ones that have a strong voice, but they don't know what it's like to take a step to the side, or now how to collaborate, or to be the support. Because we need both. Both of us as women in business, we need to be able to step into both of those roles.
Yeah. And so that was the start of your journey into studying leadership and seeing, how, what sort of natural qualities people have and how to bring out the qualities that they don't have. Is that how your leadership foray started?
It must have. Because I know when people say, like, where did you start? How do you even get into leadership? But I mean, I didn't go study leadership. I didn't study at university. I didn't go get a MBA in leadership. That just was not it. It was, but looking back, that would have been a big part of it. But even more so, going back even younger, always loving bringing my own creative voice to anything. That was my thing. We would have this, I was in French, so a speaking contest back in grade 6, year 6 for us here in Australia. And it was called the concours oratoire. And, most of the kids would memorize a poem, but I'm like, no, I'm going to write my own poem. Like, there's something about always wanting to find my own way to self-express. And I think that is a big aspect of leadership, and probably why so much of my work is really around accessing our voice, our internal voice, our voice. It makes business so much crisper and cleaner when we know it.
Oh, that's really interesting. And that you naturally had that inclination to not want to copy or use a previous poem, but just to use your own thought. You obviously had natural confidence that would be, good to a lot of people, I think myself included at the time. I can't imagine that I would have the confidence to think, that. So you naturally were a confident child.
I was, but let's say I'm also a recovering good girl. I'm very much a recovering good girl, but I don't like to label it so much because I'm also innately a very rogue person. And I just identify with that. I can look back to it now, and even hearing your feedback on me sharing that story, it's like, yeah, the more perspective I have, the more I start to connect into, God, look at me and all those moments where I was so true to myself. But I honor that enough or understand how important that was for me.
So tell us, tell us a bit more about the journey so you went back to Canada after your Australian experience, and then you studied in Canada from memory, is that right? And then what was it that brought you back to Australia, and a little bit more about that journey? I'm curious to know what the pathway was for you to get to Centre for Sass and Soul, how that's all evolved over the years.
Okay, well, part of it was probably why I left Australia the first time. I was offered a real opportunity to stay and probably really build life here. And by then I was 24. But I had a real opportunity to take on some pretty powerful programming with women in particular, working with the blind, and still within using outdoors as the education center. But then I had a very serious accident, and most of my suffering in my life has come when I haven't spoken my truth. And I had one of those moments where we set up this ropes course. All of us outdoor educators, we would gather, we would travel different places in Australia, and we'd set up camp for 2 or 3 months, which also meant we'd have to set up the whole ropes course again. They didn't stay up there. So we would literally have to climb the trees, set up the cables, test everything. And we had just set it up, and we had deemed the flying fox, which is the last activity in a ropes course. We deemed it all safe. Very simple how we set it up. And the next day, my group showed up, and my coordinator said to me, Cindy, we've changed the flying fox. And now there was 2 extra elements to it and a human element that now had to hold a rope to the side, which we never had before. And everything in me, as she was explaining it, like my whole body got tight, got hard, and an inner voice was shouting, no, 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 no. Wow. But then another voice kicked in, and it was like, everyone's around me now, right? Like people are there waiting. My coordinator's older than me. She's been around longer than me. So maybe she knows better than me. Wow. And so I didn't say anything. And let's just say at the peak speed, the rope is supposed to be out of the way, but it wasn't. And there's tons of rope hanging all the way down. And at my peak speed, the rope literally wrapped itself around me and stopped me dead in mid-flight. So I had to fly back to Canada in a spinal brace. I had to learn how to walk properly again. And I thought it was going to be, a short heal. I didn't know it would be 10, 15, 20, 5 years of ongoing, chronic pain to ongoing, just, the body shifts, the other parts of your brain, and part of your brain gets turned off and other parts of your brain gets overly activated. Never mind the lack of trust in myself, but also trust within an organization that didn't protect me afterwards.
Wow.
So I did return, and, so really the rest of my 20s and into my mid 30s, I was constantly wanting to create amazing things in the world and still be that voice that really, back in grade 6, created her own French poem. I was still that. But in between these stints of creating something, I would fall back into a tremendous amount of pain, and I didn't have the finances. So I'd always go into debt to then pay things off. But then when I'd be healthy, I would have no money. And then I'd start up again, get myself out there. What am I doing? And create things and study here and study here. It was a vicious circle. Health and finances and trust. It was a very vicious circle for me for a long time. Yeah. So it wasn't quite as simple as coming back and studying. What's the next big thing? The big thing was really coming home to myself.
Wow. Yeah, when you said that your whole body went tight and could feel it, I just got goosebumps all through my body, because we know, don't we? And that was the lesson you had to learn, that to trust your voice and to not ever question it, and the consequences of not paying attention to it.
Definitely. And I don't know a single woman who doesn't have proof of when we haven't trusted ourselves, things don't go well for us. And it can be as dramatic as my accident, to as small as just, why did I say yes? I just wanted to say no. And then our minds start to play, and we just get distracted from what we're doing, or distracted to what feels right for us. And that alone can get frustrating. Then we kind of start going a little bit into that self-doubt that starts to niggle away.
So for someone who was naturally confident as a child, writing their own French poems, standing up, and then having this tragic accident where you were literally flown home in a body brace and had years and years of recovery, and the consequences going on into your adult, like you're dealing with it even now, right? And did your confidence take a hit, did you have to go back, and you said you had to re-find yourself, or you had to come home to yourself? What was that journey like for someone who's naturally confident?
It was, I mean, it was painful. I think it was really having to let go of my identity of, like, even as being an adult, as being an athlete. So I was an athlete growing up. I was always very physically fit, and the one that had to go to bed earlier, or hearing friends or even new friends go, God, you're always like tired or run down, and just learning how to shift my identity, but not over identify with being that sick either.
Yes.
Like, how can I find that? And, even to the point where I was doing, I was still carving, I was having great experiences, and I was starting to be known as a speaker in Vancouver. I'd moved to Vancouver by this time, and, and I would speak, but then I would come back and, go, well, where do I go from this? And I realized I was over identifying with being an entrepreneur. I was over identifying with being someone that does cool things. And I'm like, what would it be like to just know I'm enough being me? And, at 36, I went out and got a job in a coffee shop. And I did it specifically because I needed to break that over identification. And it was very humbling the first week. Go ahead, Kate. You've got a question.
How did you know you needed to break that identification?
Well, one, I needed some regular income. I'll be really frank. Some of it came down to finances. It was really challenging to be like, to make some money and then not, and then I'm still paying off debt. Well, I'm still trying to get money and still trying to be a difference maker in the world. And everything was like, you know what, Cindy, let's get really honest right now. You're really tired. And it's not just your physical getting healthier. Your heart's tired, your mind's tired. And you just need something that would just bring you joy right now. And what do you love? I'm like, I love animals. I love hanging out with kids. I love kayaking. And when I could do it, and I love being in coffee shops. I don't drink coffee. I have never drunk coffee, but I love being in this little hub where it just feels like there's community, and that's where I would work. Those were my offices. I was like, what would it be like if I just poured coffee for a while? Like, it was more of an experiment than anything else. That's how it started.
I remember you telling me about that time when we caught up and you told me your story, and you had some beautiful moments just in connecting to other people. I remember you were saying that it was ended up being quite a profound impact on you and your journey. Would that be right?
Completely. To be able to just serve coffee and sandwiches and really nurture others and serving. Like, pleasing is not serving. And this was pure service. Like, I got to serve people and nurture people. And yeah, and really go, God, I'm enough as I am. I can still choose to do other things, but I don't need to in order to feel like I'm of value in the world. And my voice doesn't have to be from a raised platform. It doesn't have to have, these days it would be followers. Back then there was no such thing. That doesn't have to be the case in order for me to have value and a voice. It still can be. Not what I need.
Yeah, but what a massive realization. And you were only late 20s at this point. Is that
No,
right?
I'm 36.
Oh, okay. So you were 36 when you went back to, well, you went into the coffee shop.
35 or 36. No, I think that's important to note. Yeah.
It's
feels natural doing your 20s, but mid 30s, when you think you've got your career like sussed or everything, I'm like, no.
Yeah, amazing. So you were, prior to the coffee shop, you were someone who prided themselves on being an adventurer, traveling the world, doing exciting things, being an outdoors athlete. Then you had the accident that took away your identity as an athlete because you had to just stop and recover and rehabilitate.
Mm.
So then you're left with, but I can still be the exciting person that does cool things, and which you were doing. But it was almost like there was this misalignment because you were still identifying, it's like you needed to be cracked open in the way you were, to the point where the enough thing, which I think is the key lesson for all of us as women,
Yeah.
that to me, and the way you said, I was serving, not pleasing. I'd love to know what you mean by the difference between those two.
When I mentioned that I'm a recovering good girl, that is something that I do see in so many women, and it really has an impact on our voice. Having a voice, but also even how we use our voice internally, externally. And what I've really come to understand, and that's why I do a lot of work on the good girl,
Yeah.
that we can get very confused with wanting to support someone, wanting to help someone, wanting to serve someone, and pleasing. And we can get that confused. And so I wanted to use kind of, I guess, that coffee example of going, I wasn't giving coffee or doing any of this to please someone. Like I didn't need to be, I didn't need to be thanked. It was like, this felt like pure service. And it was so
Good job.
clean. Yeah. So that's what I mean. Service is super clean, pleasing. We still want a little something back from it. And part of me wanting back is part of an like an identity.
Yes. Yeah. And I think because I'm also a recovering people pleaser, and as so many women are, right? And I think what you're
That's right.
saying is when you're trying to please, there's an agenda. You're doing it to get validation or approval or a confirmation. Whereas service, you're just doing it for the joy of serving. And it doesn't matter how the other person receives it because just the act of serving feels good and is good. So interesting.
Absolutely, Kate. And one thing I would add on top of that is safety. Part
Mm.
of we please is because we think we're going to be safer
Mm-hmm.
person or in that environment.
Yep.
And so to get to a place where really you're still seeking safety, but the safety's within. I feel safe enough here that I can, like inwardly, that I can actually be of service externally.
That's fascinating because, the safety part for me was I need to please my mum or my dad because if I don't, they won't love me and I'll be abandoned. That's sort of the very basic
Yeah,
child thought processes that are going on, aren't they? So it's like I need to please, to be loved, to belong, to be okay, to be enough. Yeah, because you kind of experience, well, I did what felt like conditional love. So you get love, and if you be a good girl, do the right thing, make us look good, achieve, do, you know? Yeah.
that's exactly right. And while it feels like the girl thing, as women now, we can still step back into the good girl, even though that's not who we are. But it happens in meetings, it happens in community where suddenly we do desire to belong, right?
Mm.
But suddenly we feel safer if maybe, well, I think they'd rather maybe do it this way. I'm going to introduce
Mm.
myself this way, or I won't really fully say what I do, or I might downplay what I charge
Mhm.
because it feels safer instead
Yes.
of so like safe within yourself. That when you say, let's say your fee out loud, it's a pure service because like what you're bringing out to the world is service.
Mm. Wow, that's so beautiful. And so was there a particular moment of realization working in the cafe where you realized I am actually enough as I am? I don't need to be doing all these things. I am enough right now.
You know, I don't know if I shared that with you when we met one time, but I would say it happened when I was witnessed. So I had a colleague of mine who I didn't know that well. A few weeks into working at the cafe, she walked in the door. So here I am, doing this exploration of seeing if I can just, do this and just be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I see someone walk in the door that I know. And the first feeling that comes over me is embarrassment, a slight little wave of shame. And she looked at me and she was really stunned to see me behind the counter. But, she ordered a coffee. She got herself a coffee. She sat in the corner. And when it got quieter, I walked over and I sat down with her. And she proceeded to go, so why are you here? Like, just pure curiosity. And I had never really voiced it out loud to anybody else. And so it's the first time for me to sit with it. And I do remember what came out was me saying, I need to know I'm enough just being Cindy.
Oh,
And
wow.
she looked at me. And, yeah, she had tears in her eyes, Kate. I had tears in my eyes that's pouring down my face. And I was like, that was the moment when I could vocalize why I was doing it and to be that open and vulnerable to someone who would just see me do a keynote presentation a few weeks earlier, right? So that was really the change point and that's why community is so important, right? And why we need community, and that's how we grow in community, because sometimes we need that witnessing. It's not necessarily what she did, but she asked me, and I got to be held while I actually discovered and heard my own truth.
That's beautiful. And I think what allowed you to do that was she was obviously coming from a place of non-judgment and just curiosity. She wasn't judging what you were doing. She was just saying, what's going on, out of support and wanting to be a friend. So that she created that opening. Whereas if there'd been judgment in that question, you wouldn't have had that opportunity to say that.
I don't think that early, Kate. I think you're right. I don't know if I would have that early. It was still too early. Yeah.
So you were already a speaker at this point when you're in the cafe. So people knew you as a keynote speaker, and what were the topics you were talking about?
Well, I wouldn't say I was really known then, but I was definitely onto some stages for sure, and there was people that knew me. So combination. I started off. Well, funny. I'll tell you how I got into speaking. Do you want to?
As I was saying before, there's a lot of women in the audience that want to be speakers. So anything you can share on that is great. Yeah.
Great. Okay. I love it. Well, little short backstory. I have this little business card that I made when I was 19, and there's 3 things I wrote on it, and I lost it. And when I moved somewhere else in my late 20s, I came across this card, and I had done the first 2. So one was being an outdoor educator, one was getting published in a travel article magazine, and the third one said motivational speaker.
Wow.
So, and I remember reading that going, whoa. Anyhow, I had moved to Vancouver in my early 30s, and I really wanted to speak, but how do you start? Where do you start? And then someone told me about something called Toastmasters, which a lot of people know now, but I didn't know what it was, had no idea. So I went and go check this Toastmaster thing out and found an incredible group of humans. We could see the Vancouver mountains. We were at this little tiny yacht house, like right on the water. And these became some of my nearest and dearest friends. But in my second speech, I had the group came out and they said, you've got to compete. I'm like, that you compete in speaking? Like that just feels so wrong on so many levels. It's like taking poetry in university and like being marked on it. That makes no sense to me. However, it was like, oh, there's a stage and an opportunity to speak. Let me do that. And the thing is, I did that, and then I won, and then I got to the next level and I won, and then I went to the next level and I won, and then then I go to Victoria and I win. No, actually, I didn't. I was 7 seconds over, so I got canceled. I got disqualified.
Oh,
yes, but this is no, you get disqualified.
Wow.
So I was talking about Sawubona, and Sawubona in Swahili, it means I see you. So I was talking about the power of really, truly seeing each other. and creating space to see each other and be seen. And I remember you had to draw, out of the 10 speakers, you had to draw which number. And I saw the little piece of paper open and it said number 10. And I was like, I so want to be the last speaker. Pulling it. They didn't know. But I say this because when it was my time, I totally enjoyed listening to other people tell their stories. When I got up to share mine, I remember I had electricity through my entire body, and everything in me said, this is what I'm meant to do. So I do understand when there's women in this circle who want to speak. And there's always a space for you. There's always a space for you. And just the desire, it's like we said here, Kate, we've got to put ourselves forward for things. And it doesn't matter when you fortify yourself. It doesn't matter if it's one person that you're speaking to. It doesn't matter if it's online. It doesn't matter. It's that you have something that you really, really want to share and you want to speak heart to heart. So practically, if they want to start speaking, I mean, you can go practically, first of all, just the more you speak, the better you're going to get.
Practice, yeah.
Right? So organizations like Toastmasters, find the right group for yourself, though. I think there's something called Rostrum or something I've heard people here. I think it's called Rostrum. Just more opportunities to speak, to be supported, because there's not a lot of us that want to do it. And we seem like quite a crazy group. So you need people that can understand that and cheer you on. But then there's Rotary is a great place to start putting yourself forward. Look, Rotary clubs are always looking for speakers, right? And then you just start, I would say then organization, like smaller not-for-profits are a really great way because they're looking for people as well. And align it with either your topic or a personal connection for you in your experience, even if that's not the topic, but it's going to be right for them, but there's a personal connection. From there, look at all of your contacts and start letting people know that you're doing this. And more often than not, people will bring you in not just for the topic, it's about who they know you to be.
Yeah, beautiful. So that's some really good tips. You've just got to put yourself out there, don't you? And just start doing. You've got to start taking those inspired actions along the path to where you want to be. And even I know for myself, I've done a lot of speaking gigs, but I was thinking the other day, I don't even have it on my website as an offering. So, and yeah, and so just putting yourself out there as offering, keynote speaking, or so that Google can find you, and you've got to tell people and setting that clear intention, don't you? That that this is something you want to do, and then get out and practice, like you say, just take up any. Until so far, most of my speaking gigs have been for free because they've been a marketing opportunity for me. And then stepping into paid speaking and so on is the next step for me. So curious though. So after you had this sort of realization or awakening in Canada serving coffee that it was okay to just be you, it's almost like that was the melting away of the ego wasn't it? And just bringing you back to you are okay being you. And so that then the next phase of your career as a speaker and motivational coach, how has that evolved, and what's the next chapter between the coffee shop and doing what you do now?
Well, that was returning to Australia. I think there's an interesting full circle moment. So full circle coming back into myself, but also coming back to Australia, which put my life on such a beautiful trajectory. And I never ever thought I'd leave my Rocky Mountains, that I would leave my family and friends and my very strong network and very beautiful group of friends. But I reconnected with my first love. We never really broken up after.
The Sydney boy?
The Sydney boy. Sydney boy. And we would, every couple of years, we check.
He's your husband?
What's that?
Is he your husband?
No. But it was kind of feeling like, you know what? We're both still single. Neither of us had ever gone. Neither of us. It was like, maybe there's something here. And so I kind of came and realized such a beautiful man, but my first love, but not my. But then I was here and I had never come to Perth. And I knew that Outward Bound used to run a program out of Perth down near Walpole. And I'd always heard beautiful things about Perth. So long story short, I came here and ran a free session for Lululemon. And there was on beauty and body image for women. And there was a woman that worked for a boutique leadership company who was in my session. And she's like, "Who are you?" And the company ended up sponsoring me. And I remember going, oh, is what I do leadership? Like I was almost given a title. Like I was constantly doing all these different things that were very, heart-centered, empowerment-centered, all of that. And I've, been a certified coach since, it's been about almost 15 years now. I never really knew this umbrella, and working for this company was wonderful for me to be able to give me this umbrella, being able to go, wow, leadership, let me really sit in that. And then from that, being able to sit in that and explore going into companies and studying culture. And then what is the gap between where we want to go organizationally, team, business-wise, to where we are now? Like, what do we need to do? What works, what doesn't? That really gave me a chance to do that. But also within all of that, and then my husband and I going on our own pregnancy journey, going like, what is that for me? And, after we had Thomas, which I know we have some different but similar, pregnancy journeys, multiple miscarriages for me. And, I was 42 when I had Thomas, and not knowing if I was going to be a parent as well. But when I came out of that first kind of foray of motherhood, I went, well, who the heck is Cindy now? Like, there's one thing to really ground into myself back in the coffee shop. But now there's been an evolution of Cindy. I now live in a completely different country on the other side of the world. I, I'm a mother. Like, who am I? And so for me to come to the work I'm doing now, like, I really ask myself, what is it that I feel I'm best here to serve? And my own journey, personally and professionally, with finding my voice and watching too many women in these organizations that I worked at, sometimes even having a seat, but not either feeling safe enough or not knowing how to really use their voice and be heard in their own authentic way. I'm like, there's something here. And so I put together this little 6-hour day program called Rise to Shine. And I'll see if I can get even 6 ladies to come to it. And I'm just going to play again, explore, try this thing on. And in one of the old clients that I had before I was pregnant and took some time off, I called him, and he was now on the executive team of this company, exec HR. I said, is there one lady you could send? Like, is there one? And he said, get in here. We're doing a lot of work now in diversity, and I get in here. And as I'm driving, I'm going, I'm not talking about a one-day thing. I'm going to talk to him about a program. And so Rise to Shine became this program that has now been running in 4 different organizations for over 4 years, as well as an online version, because one of the women in the program said, you've got to get this out to more people. Right? So I think just for business owners, it's important to say, we start with one idea. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't need to know the whole endpoint, because who you serve will give you beautiful ideas that you wouldn't know now. And so it's been an online hub for global women. And then it's also gone corporately. And then what happened for me the last year and a bit, as some old stuff has come up again, I think as I've been writing this book, old stuff has come up, healed, and it's probably more the next iteration of healing. It's found me feeling a little flatter with some of the work that I do and going, what is that? And realizing I just want to create a hub. Like I want this hub. I want this place where where more people come. And so a couple of things. One, it's Arise to Shine has kind of morphed into this beautiful center, which is now about to launch, called the Center for Sass and Soul.
Love it.
So it's for brave women with bold dreams who know that they need to realign with their soul and kind of reconnect with your sass. Because we like to have fun, don't we?
Absolutely.
So, I've got my key programming that runs through that. And for me, there's just sometimes a rebrand. I'm shifting things around in how I do things. And lastly, allowing myself to become a student again, because I have been drawn to Kundalini yoga for 15 plus years and always said I wanted to study it, but always made an excuse for why it wasn't the right time. So alongside all this, I'm actually a student and studying Kundalini yoga. And I think that just fits in. So rebrand, refresh, but also being a learner again and not always leading.
But I think it's that constant searching for alignment, isn't it? Where is the alignment now? Where am I fully in congruence with my soul, my heart, my mind, and pivoting to match that constantly? Because that's been my lesson. When you're out of alignment, it just doesn't flow. And so and I'm sure and it sounds like that's a big part of what you do, is helping women find what is their soul yearning for. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's about alignment. Like that's the key word for me over and over these days. It's really, I really call it an alignment coach, because that's what we all need. We always need to keep aligning, because I feel that as we are smarter and mature and go deeper, whether you call it the good girl, whether you call it being out of alignment, it becomes a little more nebulous and a little trickier. And we don't always catch it because it can be a little bit
insidious.
It kind of backdoor. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And so what's been your experience? I mean, I love the new name, Center for Sass and Soul. It's just beautiful because it's being soulful and soul connected, but having sass and daring to speak up and stand out, right? Yeah. And owning your unique, quirks and everything. But what, in your experience, because so many women don't use their voice, what's the key to getting a woman to having the confidence to speak up and stand out? What's that process you use to help someone get there?
Well, first of all, confidence isn't what we're looking for. We keep thinking it's confidence. And I'm almost tired of, even though I've got something called a confidence code, it's not confidence we're looking for. Right? We keep thinking it's confidence and then we're going to speak up. I always say verb. Confidence is a verb and it comes from taking action. So what helps us get over that, what we think might be confidence, but that gap, it's that higher level meaning. There's what is the meaning of this for myself, to be able to speak my truth, or when I say my truth, it also means to share my ideas, to fully share my story, right? It's finding the deeper meaning it for ourselves, but also the deeper meaning in it for others. Then we're more willing to sit in some of the discomfort, right? Like, look how good we are at advocating for others. We're amazing at it. But learning to advocate for ourselves. So let's start with going, well, how can my voice advocate for others? Right? So that's part of it. But the other part is, we've got to fall back in love with our voices. Most of us don't like our voice. We don't like the sound of our voice.
It's true. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something I've had to make peace with over the years, all the videos we put out and so on. But you're right. You've got to be okay with hearing yourself and love your own voice. It's true. It's hard to say that, isn't it? Because it's almost like inside it sounds egotistical or something, but it's, yeah. I think really being comfortable and happy, finding joy in sharing your voice is so important, isn't it?
It is. And start by sharing it with the people who, not everyone, I don't want to use the word deserves,
Mm.
but not everyone is ready for your story. And
Mm-hmm.
not everyone, I want to say, has earned it.
That's
Now,
right.
someone who's highly, highly trusting, myself, which serves me well in some ways, but has certainly hurt me in other ways with the good girl and trust factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's really me. I've had to really learn that not everybody has earned the right to hear your story.
Mm.
So I think when you're first starting to share, do it in a safe place, right? But what's so beautiful about sharing is your own voice is healing for you.
Mm.
Your own voice is the only way you're going to probably hear what you really think and
Mm-hmm.
hear your own wisdom. There's wisdom in here, but often we need to get it out to go, you've had a good chat with a friend and
Uh,
you'll say something, you're like, oh, that, yeah, cool. I want to write that down.
yeah, that's what I actually think. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's just a recesses of our mind. We
Mm.
don't necessarily see it. Like imagine when you think back to writing your book,
Mm.
or any of the women that are writing articles or blogs. You might be kind of playing around with it and going, I don't know if this looks good. But suddenly when it's published or it's out there and it's on the screen, have you ever gone and looked at something and gone, oh, God, that's really good.
Mm.
That's deep.
Yeah.
That's why. And that came from me, right?
Mm.
But if
Yeah.
it stays here, you're not sure how wise that is yet. And
Yeah.
that's the do. We need to get it out there in order to hear it.
So true that you can know something intuitively, but it's not until you speak it out loud or write it and put it out in the public that, yeah, the real power of that comes through, doesn't it? And it's that validation then when people, I remember my first blog that I put out 10 years ago about my journey and the reception it got, and just thinking, wow, so I do have something to say and it's resonating with people. It's because I'm not alone. And I think that's the thing. It's the human experience. When you share your story, other people are always going to resonate with parts of it or some of it, but it's the vulnerability, isn't it? I think that creates that resonance with other people. Whenever we dare to get vulnerable, it gives
Yeah.
other people permission to start connecting with their own story and their own truth. And yeah.
100%.
Mm.
100%. No, I'd say our voice, first and foremost, is for ourselves. That's where it starts. It really does. And then secondly, it is something that you can use it to influence, you can use it to inspire, you can use it to inform. And I
Mhm.
think, first of all, it's almost feel.
Mm. It's really interesting because when we were on the Bali retreat in June, we had Athena Daniels come along and help my clients discover their signature story. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, all of us had done a lot of, soul searching on our business why and the vision and the mission, but it's the story that connects it all together, isn't it? And provides that real emotive power. And the breakthroughs that these ladies had through thinking of defining moments and then writing about that defining moment and the impact it had on them, it was really quite profound. Mm.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all, Kate. And it's so wonderful that you did that. I
Mm.
really mean that. And we can all do that continue to do that because mining for stories and our stories, because stories will anchor something
Mm.
within ourselves. And when we anchor that, we remember it. When people go, what was your day like? I don't know, how was your late weekend like? I can't remember, right? Our stories anchor,
Mm.
and it reminds us of the meaning in our life. Definitely. And I'm going to just share this. I know we're probably wrapping up soon, but I remember this so clearly. And that's part of the reason why I became a coach was I was two things. One, I was teaching speaking for the Vancouver School Board. So I was, and I had everyone from, ex-doctors from India who were now cab drivers in Vancouver, because that's all they could do. I mean, I had such a huge range. And simultaneously, I was working at this high-end memoir company, gathering people's stories to celebrate them. And I remember they merged the same time. I kept on hearing the people in my speaking class saying, well, we don't have any stories worthy of being shared. And then at the same time, this story came through from this memoir company. And it was a teacher in his 40s who had passed away. And his friends and family were creating this beautiful book in celebration of his life. And one of the submissions that came through, it said, let's just say his name was Jim. Jim was always wanting to be more than what he was. And he didn't know that he was just enough being Jim. And so I remember that story. I remember I was crying hearing that. And then when I heard all of my students kept saying that their story isn't worthy enough, I'm like, this is something I want to solve. And that's why I'm like, I want to become a coach and unearth, why is it that we do not honor our own stories? Because it's not usually the climbing the Mount Everest ones that most of us relate to. We can have our big signature ones, like, obviously one of mine would be like the big accident. But sometimes it's in the smallest of story. When I said yes, when I wanted to say no. Right? That someone else goes, oh, I just needed to hear that right now.
Yeah, because it's always happening for someone else too, that these human experiences, we think we're alone and we're the only one dealing with this feeling, but we all deal with it, and it's sharing that gives the comfort and the the healing. Yeah, it's so true, because I know men struggle with it too and feel they're not worthy of sharing their own story, and they struggle with imposter syndrome as well. And it's not just a female condition, but I imagine that finding that story is a huge part of the work you do when it comes to speaking up and standing out.
Definitely. And what I find really fascinating is I'm a TEDx speaker coach.
Yes.
And even working with, finding, they're not necessarily speakers, they're just human beings who have an idea, right? So just you have an idea. You might have
an idea. Yes.
So first of all, you got to go, there's value in me, in my idea. But also, they're not always used to telling a story or being personal. And you can hide behind an idea. You can hide behind a business. But when you come forward and you share part of yourself, that is the heart-to-heart human connection that no AI, no other funnels or anything are ever going to replace.
That's right.
It's you and your face and your emotions and your heart and the story in however you share it. Always.
Beautiful.
Because we want to connect. Yeah.
It's a beautiful journey you've been on and are on. So you're still your why you do what you do is because you believe everybody has a story worth sharing and everybody deserves to speak up and stand out. Would that be right?
You got it, woman. You got it, Kate.
Oh,
yes.
Beautiful. Yeah. It's so, and for you to be living that mission in such full expression, even though I know you have really struggled in the last year with chronic pain and your health and all the old stuff, as you said, coming up, and but like you say, it's that next layer of stuff to be released for you to be even more powerful doing the work you're doing.
100%. And my example for the current one is going, you know what? It's allowing me to look at things differently, and I want to have more fun. And oh, okay, let's remind that, Cindy, you want to have more fun. So once I'm true to that, it starts to shift a few things, and I start making some different choices with the business. And so it's moving towards more of an experiential, community and collaboration, to have more experiences, to have more stories to share, and to witness each other's stories within the shared experience.
Oh, beautiful. Because I think that's the challenge. Well, my next level of growth is sort of releasing some of that hardwired conditioning that you have to work hard, struggle, sacrifice, and flipping that mindset to you can actually flow and attract abundance when you simply move towards the joy or the alignment, and really trusting that, which you've had to do because you've had to let go of your big goals that you have that you're still working on, but they've had to take a back seat while you deal with the next layer of healing. So
Totally. 100%. And that trust, I mean, that is good. That's on our ongoing experience in life. Deepening our trust within ourselves, trust others to feel safe being vulnerable, but also trust in something beyond us. Right. And the deeper, whether it's faith, for some people, it's faith and religion oriented. Others, there's just a universal force, or others, it's a legacy that there's something beyond us that is going to support us. It's a triple layered trust. So always deepening ourselves in that. And we need each other to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. The 3 layers of trust. I hadn't thought of that because I know for me, the defining moment came when I'd struggled for 10, 15 years and I really felt like life didn't have my back. It felt like life was just miserable, difficult, hard, and this was just life. And then when it all, but in hindsight, you can see the little hammer giving you taps and you're not paying attention. And then it's trying to nudge you and you don't pay attention. And then eventually the sledgehammer comes out. It's like, right, if you're not going to listen, I'm going to take you out. And going through that dark night of the soul and realizing that crisis or that life-changing tragic event was exactly what you needed to break open and discover your truth and start living more authentically. And so you see then, wow, something larger than me knew better than I did and had to do that for me to wake up and see. And you've been through that many times and I have too. And I think it's that experience that you said that you learn to trust, okay, whatever, as hard as this is right now, there is a well-intended, there's a beautiful thing that's trying to come through. And if you can just surrender to that.
Yes, absolutely. Angst is overrated.
What is?
Angst. I feel like angst is something that I heard it from you in your book, right? That angst. I certainly had this angst of wanting to live a purposeful life, but there was an angst with it. Instead of this desire to live a purposeful life, there's a softness or an exploration with it, or a fun flow with it, right? And that's the maturing part. So for us to kind of keep anchoring into the maturity of that and not go back to the angst of it.
Yeah. And a therapist that I was seeing used to say there can only ever be 2 emotions, fear or love, and they can't coexist. So you're either in fear or you're in love. And fear, you can't flow because that's angst, that's worrying, it's not trusting. So love equals trust, doesn't it? Trust in the benevolent universe, the force, whatever you want to call it, that's always guiding us in the right way.
It so is. It so is. And sometimes choosing trust and choosing love can feel counterintuitive.
Very often.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And that's where I keep coming back to community, but that's where we need a safe place to be able to explore or have someone maybe even remind us,
Yes.
right? The old stuff, it's uncomfortable, but we're accustomed to that discomfort.
It feels safe because it's what we know.
It's exactly right.
It doesn't feel safe to, to listen to your heart because we haven't been hardwired to think that that's what you should do. It's, you should listen to your parents or someone else who's wiser than you, or, yeah. So, and that community, you're right, it's that reflection back to you. And someone just was saying to me last week, because I was doubting a decision I was making, and she just put my hand on my heart and she said, always trust this. And it just, it was a reminder. And it's those little connections with other people where you're right. Yes, it is through other people that you get reminded of your own truth. Even though you and I as coaches, we're always doing it for someone else, but who's doing it for us, And
yes, allowing someone else to do it for us. It's true. And we all need to be that student. We all need to be asking and not always knowing in the knowing or the leading. It's so important for us.
Yeah. Oh, Cindy, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I love it. And thank you so much. But can you tell everyone where they can find out more about your work and how to work with you?
Definitely. Come and check out my new website, which hopefully will be live by the time this goes to air, sometime this month. It's so my cindymkennedy.com. So you can think of M for Mojo. cindymkennedy.com, or come connect with me on LinkedIn. Those are really kind of the two best places, but especially the launch for the Center for Sass and Soul, that'll be on my website.
Great. So I'll put the links in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your experience and your wisdom. And yeah, just so grateful to have you on the show. And I've learned a lot today, even though you and I've caught up before. Today was a whole other level. So thank you.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for having me here. And I'm so, Kate, you're doing such beautiful work in the world. And I'm so thrilled the two of you partnered up for this podcast. Again, this is the voice, right?
That's right.
Here's the voice, right? Sharing stories, but also giving a space and a hub for other women to share their stories too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.